Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto met Nell and built a legendary alliance with Yoruichi and Harribel? Episode 2. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, Naruto's arrival has already begun changing the balance of power in this strange new world, and powerful enemies are starting to realize that the mysterious shinobi is far more dangerous than they first believed. Now, let's start. You seem rather distressed, my friend. Was he? Naruto wasn't sure what he felt right now. Things had been going so well. He'd been so certain he was alive, not dead. Everything pointed to it at the time. He still possessed all his abilities and more. Creation of all things was very much with him, as was Kurama. He remembered every bit of his life. None of it had been spent as hollow, mindless or otherwise. For the longest time, the lack of a visible weapon that all Arankars were meant to possess only helped further strengthen his delusion, proof that he was still himself, that he hadn't screwed up, that he hadn't lost his life. Until it didn't. Aizen really wasn't helping matters with that look of his. When he'd first returned to Hawako Muendo triumphant, Naruto thought he'd feel some small semblance of satisfaction or something. He'd successfully achieved what he set out to do after all. Despite that initial hiccup with Zaraki Kenpachi, and really it had been plenty fun, he'd enjoyed himself in the so-called living world. At the time, he'd even considered dipping back in to check on Ichigo. Now he just felt tired. Because you see, he was dead. And he didn't know how he died, or why, or when, only that an entire chapter of his life was closed and he couldn't even remember it. Kurama sighed. Maybe that's for the best. Ha. But Aizen was looking at him, and while he certainly didn't owe him anything, he wanted to respond, if only to blow off some steam. Sorry, I didn't realize Shinigami were so. Aizen granted him a wan smile and gestured to a seat at the table directly beside him. Unique. Odd. Insane. All of the above. Naruto claimed with a sigh and planted his head in both hands. They are, aren't they? The mastermind hummed. Soul Reapers are an odd lot. I may even miss my compatriots when the time comes to truly forsake my place there. A blonde brow rose. You're planning on betraying them. I am, yes. He glanced over his shoulder. And you've found your weapon, I see. Yeah. Naruto cast the staff on his back with a baleful look. I kinda did. Not by choice, though. A flicker of some nebulous emotions passed through Aizen's gaze. It might have been pity. Whatever it was, it vanished just as quickly as it came. May I ask you a question? He shrugged. Sure. Do you truly remember the entirety of your life? His pride prickled. What kinda question is that? Of course I do. Well, most of it. Because I do not. Something froze in his old soul as Aizen said the words. That is of course, assuming I had a good life. I am told that I was not born in soul society like some, but came to it after being sent there by a Shinigami. From that point on, I worked my way up from a raw recruit into the man you see before you now. His words brought him up short. How does that work? There are essentially two given types of Shinigami. The Soul Reaper reclaimed his own seat and raised a finger. Those who are born in soul society, eventually rising to the ranks of Reapers, and those who are sent there when they die, those who do not accept their fate in this so-called afterlife and choose instead to rise above it. I am of the latter. That was a thing he hadn't known. But when a soul becomes hollow, something different occurs. Aizen's finger fell, curling into a loose fist. They become a mindless monster driven by their hunger and prey upon any soul within reach. Even when they evolve and regain sentience, those memories will not necessarily return. Few Arankar here, if any, remember their former lives. Sounds rough. Indeed. It may be a blessing to forget who you were before. Ignorance is bliss at times. Naruto's right hand twitched, fingers drumming restlessly against the table. You really don't remember any of your life when you were, alive. I do not. The complete and utter certainty in Aizen's voice told him all he needed to know. He wasn't lying. There might have been a time centuries ago when I did, but I no longer do. That was just too sad. He wasn't supposed to feel bad for this guy, he knew. But at this moment, he did. Just a little. I don't want to forget. Then do not. Aizen fixed him with a pointed stare. Clearly your past helped build you into the man you are now. Your power hails from the past, but mine comes from the future. Together, well, he held out a hand to him. Together we will make the present a better place. Oh, he was good. He was very good indeed. But he wasn't the only silver-tongued devil here. Save your speeches. He waved a hand, cutting through his charisma like too much confetti. Keep your word to me and we'll have no problems. Of course. The sly Shinigami granted him a shallow smile. I'm not foolish enough to try and fool you in the first place. Strength for you is strength for me after all. Didn't I tell you to spare the speeches? As you wish. It was simply my intent to console you, from one lost soul to another. Lost? A thought struck him. You sent that eye-patch Shinigami after me, didn't you? His scowl deepened when his ally made no attempt to refute those words. He mentioned someone wearing glasses giving him a tip. You wear them from time to time. Aizen tugged a stray strand of hair behind his ear. I may have given Zaraki a nudge, yes. Why? He wasn't angry, just curious to see what his answer would be. He didn't disappoint him. I wanted to test you. Have I proven lacking? Far from it. Satisfaction gleamed in his gaze. You seem to excel in drawing out the potential of others. Had that proven too much for you, I would have sent someone to intervene. Which implied that he also had some manner or means of watching him from afar as well. But you handled him quite well. I would expect no less. Dodgy, and he didn't completely buy it, but at least the man wasn't actively trying to kill him. He didn't have the time for that right now. Does our agreement remain intact? It does. With a wave of a hand, he conjured a spectral image between them. I'm still looking into a way to create the Oken without extinguishing so many lives. Are we sure this thing is a key? Aizen's brow furrowed. What makes you say that? He shrugged. Call it a hunch. If push comes to shove, I guess I could try smashing my way up there, but I don't think it's gonna be that easy. The best things never were. And besides, he was becoming rather curious about this palace himself. As to whether this, Soul King, was anything like Kagaya, well. He'd made that judgment when the time came. Aizen made a noise that might have been a laugh, in another life. If it were, we wouldn't have Squad Zero to contend with. They shook hands. Their agreement remained, for now. How's Nell, by the way? I haven't seen you here since yesterday. Relatively unharmed physically, though her pride took something of a beating I'm told. Where is she? Aizen hummed and looked back at him. In her quarters, I believe, and he's gone. Sure enough, all that remained was a fading plume of smoke. Well, I suppose that's one way to secure his loyalty. 0.0.0.0. Aizen Sosuke looked back to his hand and flexed his fingers ever so slowly. Why on earth did this baffling blonde make him feel human again? How very strange. Perhaps he ought to ponder that later. But with a power like this, Urahara Kazuki would fail. And the world would finally change. Nothing could stop them. 0.0.0.0. Kishuki. Urahara hid a rueful smile behind his fan. Ah, the perils of booze. To think, he'd almost forgotten then. You see, Yoruichi Shihoin was something of an unusual drunk. Her mood often fluctuated wildly where alcohol was involved. Sometimes she could be surly, sad, even sultry sometimes after a bit of sake. But after that last battle, well, in hindsight, he really should have thought twice before putting a proper pint in her hand. He himself had other means of venting his frustrations, but her. Too late for worries now, he supposed nothing to do but ride it out. Damn it. Yoruichi slammed her now empty tankard down on the bar and slumped against it with a snarl. Blonde bastard knocked me out with one hit. I've been slacking. I need to start training again. Might even have to use my Zanpakuto. Oh, dear. Now there was an alarming idea. Now, Yoruichi. Let's not be hasty. Her mug whistled past his head and shattered against the wall. His old friend rounded on him. Kishuki. She drew his name out, hiccuping a little. Train with me. All the blood drained from his face. Well, this certainly boded poorly now, didn't it? Wherever that Arankar was, he hoped Naruto was suffering just as much as him right now. 0.0.0.0. Nalil wasn't in her room. Surprising, but she did so love her little walks under the moonlight. He didn't begrudge her that. Maybe she, too, needed time to think after that debacle in Karakura town. She wasn't the sort who enjoyed violence, but she liked being ganged up on even less. She might have a bone to pick that happy hat man as well. That in turn gave him time to ponder. He gave his staff a bleak look. Now what am I gonna do with you? Kurama offered the mental equivalent of a shrug. Try to use it. ... Wasn't as though he had much choice. Maybe unlocking it would grant him the answer of his death. He shivered a little at the thought. Now that he knew he really was dead, he both anticipated and dreaded finding his killer in equal measure. Had he died well? Was it a good death? Had he taken his enemy to the grave with him? Or were they still out there somehow? Those questions wouldn't answer themselves, he knew. Let's get to work, then. An hour later saw him out on the dunes, practicing with his new tool, if one used the term practice loosely. Release. He swung his staff in the air, drilling through an imaginary opponent. Silence reigned supreme. Well, that was a bit of a spirit breaker. Naruto glowered at his staff. I said release. It remained very inert. Open. Nothing. His temper sparked. Nell had made this look easy. He was pouring energy into his weapon. That was what he had to do, right? So why wasn't it working? Was it the word he used? Was he missing something here, or was it just sailing right over his head? He could hunt Nell down and ask for help, but the thought made him flush. No. He couldn't go asking her for every little thing. She'd already explained so much to him, done so much for him. Surely she deserved a little rest. But this stupid stinking staff. Bah! He flung it across the dunes in a fit of pique. Who needs you, anyway? Kurama coughed pointedly, recapturing his attention. On your left. Naruto looked down and found his weapon back at his side. Huh. A strange spooky staff that kept returning to his side no matter how many times he threw it away. Sure, that wasn't concerning at all. Nothing to worry about here, no siree. He'd just keep tossing it away, like nothing had happened. Baffled, he snatched it up and flung it in another direction. It landed in his lap as though he'd dropped it there. His right eye began to twitch. Enough was enough. Scram. He burst to his feet and launched it at full speed. The loathsome weapon vanished across the horizon of Hawako Muendo with a sonic boom, broke the sound barrier and became a distant star in the perpetual night sky. Even then he didn't dare take his eye from said star until it faded for fear it might reappear. A moment passed. 3, now. Good. He let himself breathe. Alright. Guess I'll figure out something else. I don't need a damn weapon to be strong. Clonk. Said staff struck the back of his head from behind at speed and drove his teeth together with a painful click, sending him sprawling face-first in the sand. His subsequent snarl was muffled by the dunes. Kuraman's laughter certainly didn't help any. His fingers fisted against the coarse grains, squeezing until they superheated into glass. What are you doing, Naruto? He was so busy raging at himself that he didn't hear Nell until she was right on top of him. Mildly embarrassed by what he'd just done, he turned his head and spat out a wad of sullen sand. Suffering. I can see that. She knelt beside him, patient as ever, lips quirked in that small, subtle smile of hers. And why is that? Because of this. He sat up and gave his staff a shake. I keep trying to unlock this damn thing, but I can't figure out how. Nothing works. Rather than retort, she patiently sat beside him instead. You've always been the dogged sort. I'm sure you'll figure it out sooner or later. You always do. Those words of encouragement were just what he needed. A grin swept over his whiskered cheeks as his spirits lifted a little. Thanks for picking me up. It helped. Appreciate ya. Her face turned a pretty shade of pink. He wondered why. You're still willing to work with us, then? Huh. He squinted at her. Of course I am. Nothing's changed on that front. Dense as ever, I see. Oi, oi. What's that supposed to mean? A dazzling smile lit up Nell's face, and quite suddenly it was his turn to flush. I'm so glad. Oh, and on your left, by the way. His sixth sense shrilled a warning almost too late. For the love of. Instinct compelled him to act. His right hand whipped out, idly blocking an emerald green sarrow before it could immolate the both of them. His palm sizzled as his fingers closed around it and squeezed. The energy shattered like so much glass, kicking up a wave of smoke in its wake. Coughing, he squinted into it, where a humanoid shape could be seen. Nell sighed softly. You know that's unnecessary, right, Ulquiorra? If you want to say hello, then say hello. He turned to find a pale hollow garbed in white on black robes, a pale finger still raised in their direction. Green eyes shone from a pale face framed by messy black hair and a half-hollow helm. It really said something when the latter seemed more expressive than the former. He told me I could try to defeat him again when we next meet. As always, his deadpan tone gave absolutely nothing away. Did I? He tilted his head, vaguely reminded of why he'd made that promise. This hollow reminded him so much of Sasuke. Oh, yeah. I might have said something like that. Ya gonna try again? A poignant pause followed as the pale hollow considered him. Not today, no. His pensive expression seemed to suggest otherwise. Why did Arankar have to be so complicated? If you've got something to say, say it. Very well. His hand fell, hanging loosely at his side as he considered him anew. Why do you exist? Seemed they were getting philosophical today. You wanna run that by me again, broody McBrood boy. Nell hid a giggle behind one hand. Ulquiorra glared at her, but recovered quickly enough. You are an Arankar, yet you exist outside of both Lord Aizen's power structure and ranking system. Those cold green eyes drilled into him. It baffles me. Why? You kill for the strangest reasons and yet protect others on a whim. It seems irrational and makes no sense. When last we met you told me it has something to do with a heart. But we are hollows. We do not have hearts. So why? He opened his mouth to reply, but Nell beat him to it, laying her hand on his. Do you need a reason to protect someone? Or to fall in love? Perfect timing. Yeah, what she said. I don't need a reason to do the things I do. I do them because they feel right, ya know. Ulquiorra considered him for a long moment. You baffle me, Nalil. You as well, Uzumaki Naruto. The blonde laughed and slung an arm around his shoulder. Ah, thanks, best buddy. He received a scowl for his efforts. We are not friends. We totally are. Ulquiorra shook him off with a sullen sigh. So illogical. Well, what are you doing here? Aha. Progress. Well, I have a Zanpakuto, but how the heck do I use it? He paused. Ordinarily one would use a command. Yeah, I got nothing. Nell giggled. Well, it's not that simple. The word encapsulates what you did while you were alive, or as a hollow. That drew an interesting look from him. What did you do while you were alive, Naruto? What did you do for those you held dear? Did you defend them? She tried giving him another nudge. Did you swear? Did you promise? Or perhaps, it was like a key turning in a lock. Something clicked in his head. His eyes widened in realization. Protect. The world burst into white light. Bankai. Nice try. Bankai. Bankai. Doesn't work that way. Bankai. Bankai. Bankai already, damn it. You got wax in your ears, partner. I just told you that won't work. Wasted and gasping for air, chest heaving from hours of fruitless exertion, Ichigo Kurosaki hefted Zangetsu in his right hand to glower at the massive cleaver. A pale reflection of his own face leered back at him deep within the gleaming edge of the blade, white as bone, dark gold eyes burning against black sclera, visage twisted in a crazed grin without a care in the world. It was decidedly eerie, seeing his own visage staring at him like that. Hard to believe this was his Zanpakuto. Still, he had pulled him out of the fire when it mattered most, so surely that meant something. Hell, if not for him, that blonde hollow might've. Dot. Dot dot. No, don't think about that. He had bigger fish to fry. Speaking of which, what the hell's your problem? My problem. That same horribly smug smile was his reward as the soul of his sword refused to falter. My problem is you. You're making demands of me, amateur. Me. I saved your bacon back there. Show a little respect. A muscle jumped in his jaw. This isn't about respect, it's about survival. In an instant the weight of his blade tripled, smashing the mighty cleaver into the ground at his feet, nearly taking his foot off in the process. Precisely. You won't survive without me. So stop treating me like some damn tool and show proper respect. Ichigo grit his teeth. He'd never felt so weak in all his life. It was a sobering reminder, even with his newfound power there were others out there with even greater strength. He couldn't protect anyone like this, not Rukia, not Orihime, not his family, not anyone. Oh ho. And here I thought you were too much of a meathead to bother with girls. He gripped Zangetsu's hilt with snarl, blasting a massive Getsuga into the dirt, spraying rubble every which way. Good, Ichigo, good. That's the way. Use that anger, harness it, channel it into strength. Brown eyes briefly blazed yellow before he blinked the haze away. I know what you're doing. Trying to help you. Hefting the sword of his soul, he glared at his other self. He'd seen Naruto fight that captain to a standstill. He hadn't been able to get close to either of them. He was weaker than them both. Weak. The word burned in the back of his brain like a brand, infecting his every thought, staining his resolve. Urahara was sighing somewhere in the background. He could hear him, the absolute bastard. But none of that mattered now. So long as he lent him his training grounds, he could complain all he liked. He would get the hang of this sword. He would become stronger. He had to. He must. Fine. He grunted at last, acknowledging his mistake. You're right, I'm wrong. I won't treat you like a tool. Zangetsu's golden black eyes widened in surprise for a brief moment, then his face split in a sardonic smirk. You and I are gonna get along just fine, amateur. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Stop calling me that. Better me than the old man. He would have shackled your progress, slowed you down. Old man. Not important. What is important is this. You're weak, Ichigo. A vein pulsed in his temple. Say that again. Weak, weak, weak. His other half cackled hysterically, making the blade physically tremble from the sheer force of his mirth. I'll say it as many times as it takes to get through that thick skull of yours. You're a baby bird that can't fly, an ant swept up in a storm, a toddler crawling on all fours. All you can do is swing that sword of yours. But don't worry, you won't be weak for long. I'm gonna make you strong. How? I'm so glad you asked. Now tell me, what you know about hollows? His brow furrowed. Probably less than I should. A merry laugh followed. There's a good king, admitting his faults. His right eye twitched. What was that? Nothing. Now, then. Spiritual pressure. It came out of nowhere. One moment he was scowling at Zangetsu and enduring the Zanpakuto's madness. In the next an unseen weight slammed down on his shoulders, driving him to a knee. It felt like an ocean had opened up above him and he was trapped beneath it, drowning, unable to move, unable to think, unable to breathe. It eased a second later, leaving him wasted and gasping for air. Despite the inherent dread it conveyed, that overwhelming presence felt familiar, like that blonde bastard. Yet when he glanced around, no one was there. Not a soul. Even so, he felt it, knew it. I'm afraid of it. What the hell was that? I think that was your foxy friend. Silence pervaded the clearing. Ichigo glanced at his sword. So about that Bankai. Yeah, his pale self sighed, we should probably get on that. 0.0.0.0. Sosuke Aizen stood in the heart of his citadel, surrounded by shifting shadows and the echo of distant colliding moons. He folded his hands behind his back as he observed the swirl of golden-orange light blossoming on the horizon of Hawako Mundo's desert. He was not idle by choice, he had been watching for some time now, observing. His dark eyes were fixed on the spot where Naruto had exhaled his strength. Now it was a pillar, rocketing upward. A slow, almost imperceptible smile spread across Aizen's face. The sight was exquisite. Naruto's chakra, entwined with the essence of the nine-tailed fox, coloring the air with a brilliant hue against the sky's dull maw. It was unlike anything he had seen among this realm's denizens. He sensed it as much as saw. A primal force, not unlike the Ryutsu of the strongest Espada, but laced with something different. This was no mere Arankar awakening, it was unique. As expected of his partner. He'd arrived only a short while ago. Now he watched Nalil beside him, eyes wide with wonder. In that shared silence, Aizen allowed himself a moment of smug satisfaction. So this is the result of my gambit. Years of machinations, hidden research, all for this. Naruto had proven to be far more interesting than expected. He was no pawn carved neatly into Arankar form. His very power was unpredictable, monstrous, yet compelling. If properly directed, such a force could usher in a new age. Aizen's lips quivered as he noted Nalil's face gently lighting up under Naruto's glow. She stood near him but remained transfixed, chest rising with excitement. She never took her eyes from Naruto's form, even though she could not fully see it. A taut smile tugged Aizen's own lips as he leaned slightly forward. Naruto need not fall on his knees and swear absolute loyalty to him, he was a patient man. Power, Aizen murmured quietly to himself, voice lilting like ice in warm honey. It carried just enough warmth to seem almost amiable. Incredible power. The word was grudging praise, meant as much for the fellow before him as for his own careful planning. He felt it coursing from Naruto like a burning river, the kind that carved canyons of opportunity if one knew where to divert it. Aizen closed his eyes for a moment. He mentally catalogued everything he knew of this world's new ally. Heat. Light. A feral ferocity. He had lived long enough to know this was not just chakra, or a glorified chakra manipulation, it was much more primal. 700,000 facets, he mused. Who would have guessed such raw talent resided in a mortal shell? As Naruto's inferno of chakra slowly subsided, Aizen opened his eyes. He nodded, almost imperceptible. Within that little nod lay satisfaction and purpose. The experiment had proven promising. Much of his plan might have been hunch, but fate smiled tonight in the form of Naruto's unleashed might. And there it is, he said aloud to himself, as much a confirmation as an incantation. He felt arms shift, Nalil had not moved since the release. Aizen turned to her, still gazing at the fading echoes. Impressive, he observed softly. Isn't it? Nalil blinked, shaking as if waking from a dream. She beamed, eyes glowing, and nodded, words catching in her throat. Why yes, she whispered with a smile, glancing toward him over her shoulder. He's brilliant. Aizen's smile deepened, barely noticeable. Yes. Brilliant, he agreed, as though he had not already drawn that conclusion before the display began. He clasped his hands behind his cloak once more. It seems our dear comrade's full strength is beyond even what the espada can wield, but we will need to keep an eye on him. Meanwhile, inside Aizen's mind, threads of calculation wove themselves. There would be a response to this. Naturally, the other hollows of this realm, some of which he very much wished to recruit, would take notice. A particularly surly skeleton, for instance. Barragan's response, the mood of Hueco Mundo, the loyalty of the newly gathered allies, all were variables in his grand design. This demonstration would surely change some of those variables. Aizen allowed it to intrigue him. How would each player react to the spark Naruto had just thrown into this scorched earth? Nalil flicked a strand of moss-green hair from her eyes. Her heart was pounding so fast she was sure it could beat out of her chest, and all her blood felt like it had turned to molten gold. She took a breath and stepped forward a little, closer to the epicenter of energy, closer to Naruto. How amazing, she said softly to herself, but loud enough for only Aizen to hear. Naruto. Aizen's gaze flicked to Nalil. She was quiet, her form trembling with emotion. He allowed himself a rare, indulgent grin. His new ally had inspired feelings even in an espada, which tickled him. He remembered what Nalil was to him: broken, lost, reclaimed. Perhaps Naruto was healing something in her heart with that power. He pondered that silent thought and wondered if he might harness it. Aizen murmured. He turned back toward where Naruto stood at the edge of the light. Naruto's released state had finished, sealed back into his staff, and now he looked like himself again, but still radiant. He was breathing heavily, hands balled into fists, and sweat made golden rivulets on his brow. Aizen felt such control, such calm, in his own aura beside her. Nalil, he said quietly, though more to himself than to her. It appears you are not the only one with a weakness for flames. Nalil's cheeks flushed deeper. She didn't look away from Naruto, rather, she couldn't. A warm longing bloomed in her chest, visible even to him. Aizen chuckled softly, tilting his head. Yes. Very well, Nell. But for now, his voice became sharper, heavy with purpose. We have other matters to attend to. Barragan's been restless. This new development may provoke him. We should keep watch. Nalil finally turned to Aizen's face, eyes luminous and gentle. Of course, she agreed, steadying herself. As Aizen turned his back on the fading pyre of chakra, his cloak swirling around him like midnight wings, Nalil quietly took one last look at Naruto over Aizen's shoulder. The new light had faded, but her memory of how he looked in it would remain forever. Dazzling, invincible, and warm. 0.0.0.0. Meanwhile, in the distant human world far from these events, Yoruichi Shihoin trained under the late afternoon sun. Her furrowed brow betrayed fatigue, but her movements were precise and powerful. Sandbags swinging on chains became blurs around her as she struck them with a rapid succession of kicks and punches. Each blow was more ruthless than the last. Each reeked of her frustration. She wrapped her knuckles with tape and snapped it against her forearm, breathing hard. This place, her secret dojo on the outskirts of the human world, held only the impact scars of her training. Around her, the sky was painted with sunset oranges and purples. But she saw none of it. Her golden eyes were shadows of anger and something else she couldn't name yet. She remembered Naruto's strength, that ally with him, how easily she had fallen in the face of them. And she'd felt the terrifying spiritual pressure. She clenched her fists. Training won't break this body, but he surpasses me, and I. Her pride stung. A growl rose in her throat. Yoruichi's golden eyes narrowed as she envisioned Naruto's grin. I'm supposed to be faster than this. Yet she wasn't. A bag swung from left to right in front of her. Yoruichi stepped forward, whipping a roundhouse kick with astonishing speed. Her leg moved so fast that it blurred into a streak of black and violet. Contact sent the bag spinning. A heavy exhale gusted from Yoruichi's lips as it swung back. She released her foot and pivoted, delivering an elbow into the swinging bag. It dented inward with a satisfying crack, swinging the bag forward to collide into a nearby concrete pillar. The pillar's plaster chipped, cracks splintered outward. Yoruichi's eyebrow ticked upward. Better. Yoruichi leapt into a forward roll and sprang up to deliver a spinning back kick. Her boots carved a clean line through the evening air. But the bag shattered under the power, fibers strewn about her like confetti. She turned, searching in the empty spot where the target had been. A grin formed on her face for a fraction of a second. And then the anger came surging back. Why am I so angry? She wondered, panting lightly. Clearly, she was better off than Naruto in many ways. She had more freedom, more experience, and certainly fewer holes in her chest. Yet the hurt remained. She looked at her hands, the scars and seams on her gloves. This pain gnawed at her, not from Naruto's strength, but from something deeper. Is it jealousy? She asked herself. Or admiration? Yoruichi tightened her fists again. It didn't help to parse it now. She gave a snort. Damn it, she muttered to herself, stamping her foot once, stirring dust. He's too damn reckless anyway. Who does he think he is? She forced herself to focus on her breathing, the rhythm steady in and out. I'll show that big idiot, Yoruichi whispered aloud, not hiding her mixed feeling of ire and something else. Her tail swished sideways. How dare he outpace me like that? Her voice softened, betraying a hint of relief. A complex emotion flickered. Pride. She felt a glow that felt good, but it was undercut by frustration. Yoruichi sprinted a few steps, then turned and unleashed a series of lightning-fast strikes at the air. 1, 2, 3, a flurry. Each blow she threw with precision. She tried to catch the feeling of Naruto's power in each fist. She tried to be as ferocious, as fierce. Why did her chest burn now, after such strikes? The emptiness pushed her to move again. She skipped backward into a graceful somersault, landing on her toes with an abrupt squeak. She wanted to exceed him, surpass him, because. Because why? Because they were friends. Allies. They most certainly weren't. Because of that damn smile. Yoruichi delivered a final punch straight out, breaking several reeds that had been growing stubbornly in the ground before her. She twirled on one foot, another graceful flip, and then stood still. Her sides were heaving as she clenched her jaw. Enough for today. She smirked at her reflection in a distant cracked mirror propped against a wall. Reflexively, she ran a hand through her hair. Realizing she could still improve after all this time warmed her spirits like a tide of pride. But the other side, the one turning like anger or something else, wouldn't calm. In this, she could understand why Ichigo was training himself half to death. The strong always dominated the weak, and Yoruichi was not weak. I have to be better. Even as she straightened up and walked toward the path home, her mind bounced with mixed thoughts. Maybe I should have saved that last punch for Naruto, she murmured. But one thought remained clear among the swirl. Whether Yoruichi's feelings were anger or admiration, one thing was certain, she would not be left behind. She would catch up to that stubborn, chest-holy brat in her own way, even if she had to burn out the shadow in her own chest to do it. 0.0.0.0. Nalil's skin felt as if it were aflame. Though the chill of Hawako Mundo was bitingly present, her pulse hammered with heat. All she could see was the golden-orange blur of Naruto's aura, reflected in her wide eyes. Every instinct in her body leaned forward as if to draw closer, eager to breathe the same air he exhaled. Her mouth was dry, she wet her lips with the tip of her tongue. From where she knelt, crouched low on a dune, she saw Naruto's chest rising and falling with heavy breaths, sweat on his brow. He was still as a statue carved from honeyed sunbeams. As the glow receded, an empty ache of loss bloomed in her chest. She still clung to the phantom warmth of the power like a moth to flame. The air itself felt diminished around her as Naruto's raw chakra ebbed away. Nalil's emerald eyes followed him as he stowed his staff over his shoulder. Relief and pride in something softer. Why did it make her think of the tender afterglow of a sunset, trembled inside her. All doubt in her mind dissolved. Naruto had risen to the challenge. He could protect others. A flutter of warmth spread from her heart to her lips. Protect. Such an ironic name to unsheath his released state. Without thinking, Nalil moved forward swiftly, stepping out from behind a crumbled wall. Naruto. She called softly. The word caught him by surprise, as though he'd forgotten she were there at all. He spun around, breathing heavily, and their eyes met. Naruto's fiery orange light was gone, but Nalil saw it still flicker within, in the way his eyes held it, and in the air of silent pride around him. Hey, Nell. Naruto said, instantly flush with color at the memory of her name. Sorry, just lost in thought. The breeze carried his scent, charcoal and sunlight, and something all her own. In the flickering twilight, she looked both ethereal and alive, strange as the contrast might sound. That was impressive, Nalil managed, immediately cursing herself for the whisper. She brushed green strands of hair from her face and approached slowly, as if unsure any of this was real. You've got some power, Naruto. I've never seen anything like that. Naruto let out a ragged breath. That was new, he admitted, offering her a weary smile. Kinda got carried away. Nalil's eyes softened. It was beautiful, she insisted, stepping closer. He lifted his chin slightly, surprised by the awe in her voice. Powerful, she corrected herself. Her hand brushed his shoulder gently and then wound behind his neck, fingers digging into his colorful clothes, latching on tight. Intoxicating. His eyes widened, but she didn't give him time to respond. She murmured a quick apology. Before he could react, Nalil leaned forward with heartfelt reverence and pressed her lips to Naruto's, caging them a gentle kiss. He froze for the instant it took her to close distance fully, shock crossing his face. Her lips were warm and full. Golden strands of hair tickled his cheeks as she held him tightly. When he realized what had happened, he blushed harder than ever, and began to pull back. But Nalil caught his gaze, unwavering. She felt a surge of affection that she could no longer contain. She bit her bottom lip softly, then closed the gap and kissed him again, longer this time, kinder. Around them, the stillness of dusk settled. If there were winds or the cries of the distant Arankar, they could not have been heard over Nalil's racing heart. When they finally broke apart, almost reluctantly, Naruto looked speechless, face burning brighter than the exploding flame of his chakra moments ago. She giggled, hiding her flush behind her hand. Sorry, she whispered anew, eyes sparkling. I've never been that close to someone I admired, I simply lost control. Naruto's jaw dropped, and he made to speak. Nalil gently laid a fingertip under it and forced it shut. Shish, she laughed softly, still incredulous and happy. Don't be mad. Her expression shifted into a grin of pure warmth. I think we make a pretty good team, don't you? That was all the forgiveness Naruto needed. His heart sped up with hope and joy that made his chest wound ache even more. He found his voice. Why yeah, he managed, his smile returning fully. We do. 0.0.0.0. High above the desert wastes in the cracked heights of a great tower, Berrigan Lusenbairn sat upon his crumbling obsidian throne. His silver hair was an ashen mantle around his regal shoulders, his face haughty, framed by that skeletal scowl Aizen had bent into compliance. Sprawled before him was the ruin of countless rebellions, blood-streaked marble and the shattered remains of souls who had once challenged his sovereignty. All of them lay inert in the dust of defeat. Yet today, even Berrigan's vast arrogance could not ignore the tremors in the air. The hour was late. The moonlight, pale and cold, fell through vaulted arches to his chamber, and the silence was pressed heavy on all sides. Normally, Berrigan delighted in solitude, being a king made loneliness bearable. But the flicker, subtle as candlelight at dusk, had caught him unawares, a momentary brightness on the horizon. He rose from the throne at last, joints cracking with disuse. What was that? The old king demanded, voice echoing through stone halls as he stalked toward the balcony. The wind answered with a howl. The desert sand had glazed the horizon with gold as an inferno flickered, visible even from his distance. Berrigan's eyes squinted as he leaned on the marble, eyes narrowing against the dust and shimmering light. Out there somewhere, someone had ignited Hueco Mundo itself. Or unleashed something close. His senses were hardly negligible, so if he sensed, he saw. He saw light from a distance, even in the shadows. Color bloomed into consciousness in Berrigan's icy chest. Awe, then horror, then something deeper, jealousy. His world stood still, a silent tempest brewing behind his eyes. A ninja. He had not expected ninja powers to reach here. Berrigan stiffened as a smile peeled across his face, but it was all as empty as bone. Naruto's light consumed chunks of the horizon, and Berrigan felt, for perhaps the first time in years, completely overshadowed. The flame did not belong to his kingdom, or maybe it belonged to him by right, far more than that boy. Berrigan flared crimson with outrage. This was Hueco Mundo's land, not a playground for outsiders. Alone at his height, Berrigan's heart thudded with fury that was nearly foreign to him. Power. His lips curled, mirroring Aizen's cunning grin to himself. Even Aizen's new toy reveals secrets. Every day, Berrigan reassured himself he was second only to Aizen. Yet now, witnessing this power made him feel smaller. If he died tonight, the desert would barely notice. Life, Berrigan decided, had become torture. His voice, smooth as old stone, carried to the sky beyond. So someone has outshone me, he grumbled. Nothing in Hueco Mundo was greater than he, and he felt all that slipping. Enough. Warmth turned to ice. Berrigan seized the golden light washing the horizon. The desert couldn't celebrate it. He would not kneel to it. He would force the world to kneel to him. Berrigan's body moved without waiting for thought. The throne dissolved behind him as Arrancar materialized. His boots grounded onto the great stone floor, leaving cracks and lines that seemed like dark veins. He adjusted his axe, the weapon of senility and authority, tightly in his withered fingers. With a roar of his own, he flung himself off the balcony into the dark night air. There could be no light in this dead, sunless realm. He must silence it at once. Something was trying to catch him. Trying, being the operative word. Failing, more like. For the better part of a week now, Naruto had sensed a spiritual pressure on the edge of his awareness chasing him, constantly seeking him out. Sometimes for minutes, hours at others, always hounding him at the oddest intervals, and always falling just short as he slipped through their grasp. It was fun. Oh, yes, he had an inkling of who was chasing him, which was precisely why he went out of his way to avoid them. He began to make a game of it as the days dragged on, sometimes slipping into the human world where the spiritual presence couldn't or wouldn't follow, at others escaping it by the thinnest of margins, thereby forcing it to chase him from one end of Hueco Mundo to the other until it inevitably gave up for the day, much to the chagrined amusement of Aizen and his Arrancar. He even managed to rope Nalil and Ulquiorra, albeit with a great deal of bribery on the latter's part, into playing along with his charade, thereby aiding him in his little game. But all games must end, and so did his, quite suddenly one day. He'd been going over a new report from Aizen down in the dunes, something about him recruiting a new Arrancar by the name of Harribel. He was rather eager to meet her himself. A new ally. A new friend. Finally, something to break through the doldrums of the day-to-day. Problem was, she and her underlings liked to wander, so he hadn't actually met her yet, meaning he had to hunt her down himself. Stranger still, Nalil was being sulky for some reason and refused to go with him to meet her. Here are bigger than mine. Just what in blazes did that mean, oi? Kurama sighed. Still dense as a brick, I see. Something interrupted him as he pondered that question. It was his own fault. Really, he'd lingered too long in one place and gotten distracted. Like a fallen star, a massive monstrosity sped across the unsteady air, honing in on where he had glimpsed Naruto. Cape bristling atop his shoulders at the sight of him, the old Arankar's gnarled face twisted into a confident sneer. The second he saw Naruto's figure descending from the glow, all his restraint vanished. He attacked. Enough! He bellowed, voice booming like thunder, scattering the sand around them at his command, even the wind stilled. You shall flee from me no longer. Who are you supposed to be? Poor choice of words, that. Within moments, the Arankar towered above him, a mighty axe planted firmly on the cracked earth. He looked larger in the other's presence, it felt natural, like twilight claiming the sun. His skeletal grin widened. You, he hissed, voice low and conspiratorial but laced with venom. You think you can come here and flaunt your undisciplined power before me? Again, I have no idea who you are. The behemoth lashed out at him, axe cleaving the air. Naruto swayed aside lightly, dodging the blow, colorful coat fluttering in the wind of its strike. I am Baragan Luzenbarn, king of Hawako Muendo. Kurama snorted in his soul. So he claims. Naruto mirrored it. As Baragan boomed at him, the blonde only folded his arms, temper rising from the confrontation. Despite his surface calm, his mind raced. The Espada before him was not monstrous in size, the entity would have even seemed frail in previous times, but his presence was immense, oppressive. He was awe-inspiring, an alien ruler with rags of kingdom decaying all around him. Yet his pride would not back down. Naruto smirked, posture unbowed. Arankar's words fell onto strong ears. Flout my power, huh? His voice carried a spark of humor. It's more than flouting, just calling it what it is. He tilted his head, eyes clear in the darkness. Hey, old man, I mean Baragan, didn't you hear? The desert doesn't have a king these days. What insolence. Baragan hissed. He puffed up. Old man. His laugh was a bark of scorn. Do not presume familiarity with me, whelp. He inhaled, eyes alight with cruel amusement. But I shall allow your insolence once for my entertainment. As your liege, you will address me with respect. Respect. For what, exactly? There was nothing to respect here. Naruto scoffed, smiling, taking on a sharper, uglier edge. What's there to respect about you? He gestured with one arm, not deigning to draw his staff. You're living in a crumbling castle, Gramps, and I haven't seen hide nor hair of you until now. If you really were in charge, you would have met me the moment I found myself in this place. Instead you cowered in the shadows, like a dog. A lone finger rose, jabbing his way. I know we don't exactly have mirrors here, but just take a look at yourself. Baragan's good eye narrowed upon him. Watch your tone, boy. Or what? He held nothing back. The thrill of anger gave him momentum, spurring him onward. You'll lop off my head. Turning a baleful look to the man's weathered axe, he gave it all the respect it was due, that is to say, none at all. King, you say. What are you king of, exactly? A world of sand. There are no castle walls here, my lord. No ceiling, either. No subjects that cherish your so-called rule. Indeed, one could say you are. Do not say it. King of nothing. He spat back, grinning ear to ear. The king's jaw snapped shut. Baragan straightened with the idea that Naruto had said something witty. At length, laughter exploded from him, a dry, rasping sound. So the fox soldier is brave, is he? A pleasure, then. Let me make one thing clear. He raised his spear, golden-stained glass forming at its tip. Your pitiful demonstration is an affront to this world. I demand your fealty. Swear to me that you serve the second Espada, and perhaps I shall regard you as a worthy subordinate instead of an intruder. Naruto bristled. Heat surged across his face. Insult at being commanded. A shiny, stubborn defiance filled him. Forget that. He straightened up to Berrigan's eye level, far lower than expected, but he didn't look away. Swear fealty to you. Are you crazy? I just made all that power look easy. Why would I ever bend my knee to the likes of you? The tension between them snapped like a drawn string. Berrigan's eyes gleamed a dull red. Scars and wrinkles did not hide the surprise of Naruto's brazenness. Bruised pride fueled the emptiness Berrigan felt, and in an instant rage replaced his smirk. A cruel grin spread as brought forth his weapon. Then you will die. His axe slammed down with a singular command. Rot. Arrogante. All flesh fell away, decaying from his bones in a matter of moments, leaving him face to face with a skeletal warrior, crown upon his head. Wreathed in baleful black robes, the lich-like creature leered at him, skeletal jaw parting with an audible clack of sound. In that second of gloating cruelty as basked in his true form, Berrigan sneered at him like the so-called king he claimed to be. I shall allow you to release your weapon as well. Consider this a final mercy from your lord and liege. Naruto thumbed his nose. Nah, don't need it. Impudence. He exhaled furiously with respira, a grim breath decaying the air itself. Rotten age attacked Naruto as if flesh had spontaneously turned to vinegary flesh, but his superior regeneration took that to task, mending the damage in an instant. As Berrigan balked, he charged in without fear, a dart of golden-orange energy, wholly different now from moments before. Naruto moved past the fading damage with uncanny speed. He ducked under Berrigan's swung axe and landed a solid blow to the skeleton's knee with a booted kick. The creature's axe clanged against the rock, vibrating through his sturdy bones. Silver dust fell from cracks in the ground as he reeled. Naruto's second strike followed, a heated punch to his rigid face, knocking him backward. Berrigan recovered, eyes raking at Naruto's steady advance. He sneered. Mere trick, shinobi. He spat, though his face was a grimace of pain. He stabbed downward with his axe, unleashing a jagged line of rotting wind that burrowed toward Naruto's leg. Naruto laughed, wholly without humor, taking advantage of Berrigan's arrogance. He somersaulted over the blade, landing behind the older Orochimaru with a thundering knee to his back. The blow cracked bones and racked him to the side, causing him to stagger on shaky legs. Naruto seized the moment, flashing a grin. He reached back, channeling chakra, forming a Rasengan in his palm. With a single step he slammed it into Berrigan's chest. The impact sent the skeletal abomination flying into the desert. He crashed through a dune, falling to the ground with scattered grit. Naruto landed lightly before him, arms crossed before his chest. Had enough. Berrigan coughed blood, defiant though beaten. He used desiccation to draw shattered life into himself, straightening on his hands with aging smoke curling around his form. His precious golden crown had begun to crumble atop his skull. You, insufferable child. He wheezed. I am the king here. You will kneel. Ha. Naruto barked a laugh. I don't kneel for anybody. He cocked his head. Especially not the ancient, the jealous, or the decrepit. Berrigan's grip on his axe tightened. Absently, he watched his cleaving weapon sink into the sand. Boy. He tried another, respira. This time, a cloud of dust formed around Naruto like rot in a cloud. He was already prepared. With both arms extended in a martial pose, he conjured a cyclone of chakra, a whirling typhoon of wind chakra. The cyclone hit Berrigan's respira with full force and tore it to pieces. Berrigan's eyes widened mere moments before the cyclone found him, tossing him away like a child's unwanted toy. Naruto dashed forward, agile as a panther, the cyclone encircling with but a thought. He was on Berrigan in an instant, elbow to ribs, and a boot to the back of the head. The Urankar hit the ground on all fours, groaning furiously. You dare strike your king? Naruto stepped forward, shaking his head. I'm about to do a lot more than that. Berrigan's head snapped up, black on red light building between his jaws. Die. It was a very nice Sero, Naruto mused in hindsight, point blank, impossible to dodge, even for him. He had no choice but to cross his arms and tank it, let it sear across his clothes and flesh. If it weren't for his superior regeneration, he might have died then and there. When the smoke cleared, he remained much as he was, robes singed, chest burnt, wholly unamused. Baragon balked. What are you? Enough. Sick of it, Naruto raised his foot to stave in Baragon's skull. Sunshine caught on his eye, signaling the weight behind the upcoming kick. But before he could finish him, a silky voice cut through the night, silencing even the wind. Naruto, the voice said, almost apologetic. Aizen. Had to be. How annoying. Naruto froze, boot raised. Baragon's ragged face lifted in confusion. High above them, Aizen drifted down like autumn snow, landing gracefully between Naruto and the fallen. Expression was placid and unreadable, the faintest smirk ghosted at one corner of his mouth. In his hand, he held his still-sheathed Zanpakuto, poised to draw in an instant. A white haze almost seemed to cling to him as his spiritual pressure enfolded around his body. You've done well, Naruto, Aizen said quietly, voice laced with satisfaction. Then louder, to Baragon, now stand down. Baragon, gasping and beaten, glared at the newcomer. He managed to grunt, you would have me yield. His voice was hoarse, broken. The world seemed to warp as two absolute powers faced him, one battered at his feet, one hovering above. The world of hollows held its breath. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Aizen allowed himself to breathe. This was a sufficient test. Very satisfying. The smiling Shinigami watched through narrowing eyes as Baragon's faltering spiritual pressure faded beneath the night sky. Naruto had stood down, leg lowered but still poised to deliver the final blow, and certain to look away from his blaze. The boy's pride glimmered like steel in his gaze. Aizen stepped quietly back, allowing the wounded Baragon 2 heartbeats of false victory. It was enough. Baragon's chest heaved against the crimson spill from Naruto's attack. He tried to speak, something raw and insistent rising to his lips. It was all Aizen needed. In a flash so fast not even the old King Urankar reaction could follow, Aizen's blade was at Baragon's throat. A single swipe was all it took. Baragon's eyes flared open, rage, shock, confusion. Aizen. He tried to choke out, the title lost in a gurgle. His head rolled from his bony shoulders, struck the ground, and began to dissolve. His body was already stiff, his knees buckling. He'd slain him. Mid-sentence, mid-breath, mid-scheme, the king of time now a victim of it. His power faded instantly, leaving only dust motes where once spirit danced. Naruto stared, dumbfounded, at Aizen's calm posture. He turned a baffled glance, staring up at Aizen. You. He began, but the words died in his throat. Aizen simply cocked an eyebrow. You were about to kill him, Aizen said softly, touching his hand lightly to his ear. Am I not correct? Naruto seethed with conflicting emotions, he could tell. Baragon lay at their feet, dissipated. At Aizen's actions, it was impossible to tell whether the blonde felt relief or disgust, perhaps both. He kept his voice even enough. You used him, didn't you? This was another test. Aizen shrugged gracefully, a silky smirk playing on his lips. I simply removed a loose thread, he said dismissively. The smile turned to a respectful nod toward Naruto. As always, I admire your strength and loyalty, my friend. And true friends protect each other, do they not? Naruto stood, backing off. His gaze stayed on Aizen. You could have just let me handle it, he said, voice low. Aizen's eyes gleamed with amusement. This is not a matter for you alone, Naruto. Baragon's final loyalties no longer matter. He has outlived his usefulness. His tone was final, like a judge passing sentence. To Aizen, it was just another calculation. A flicker of humanity appeared in his eyes upon seeing Naruto's hurt face. I'm sorry if I upset you. But there were considerations. Jin had suggested they remove the old Arankar, while Tosin argued otherwise. In the end, it came down to cold logic. Threats must be removed. Naruto clenched his fists, drawing him back to the present. Bastard, he said flatly. You'd never let anything get in the way of your plans, would you? Nothing that cannot be sacrificed. Yes, Aizen replied calmly, wiping his blade clean against his cloak. Barragan had become inadequate. Naruto's heart clenched. He spat, inadequate. That crazy old fool didn't deserve that. He was going to kill you. Aizen sighed, absurdly gentle in his reply. He was. But, my dear Naruto, he sheathed his Zanpakuto and stepped to stand alongside the blonde. Over the pale horizon, the first star of night winked bright. Aizen's gaze drifted, almost fondly, to Naruto. He was weak. You are strong. I need allies who understand strength, not those stuck in dilapidation. The blonde didn't flinch. If anything, he looked quietly contemplative. For a moment, Aizen felt truly pleased, seeing an equal in him, someone who might stand the test of time. Content. He turned to walk away, offering Naruto one final glance of approval. You handled it well. Continue to grow, and our goals will remain aligned. Naruto watched Aizen leave, the victorious glow of war settling in his eyes. Aizen's words, warm as poisoned honey, left him conflicted, but more sure of his own beliefs than ever. He had no kings. His loyalty was to his friends, not to manipulation. Barragan's corpse dissolved into dust upon the ground, the desert reclaiming its own. Naruto took a deep breath to keep himself from being sick, or angry, or anything that might break the calm he was forcing. Whatever games Aizen played, he knew one thing: he would decide who truly deserved his respect or ire. And tonight, he'd learned some harsh, muddy truths. As the dust settled, Aizen's voice drifted back on the night breeze, almost inaudible. Strike true, Naruto, he whispered, leaving an ember of a promise behind. Long live the king. Naruto ran light-footed across the shifting dunes of Hawako Mundo under its pale moon, his cloak of chakra flickering around him like a whisper of flame. Somewhere ahead, out where he remembered seeing unusual sparks of Ryutsu, he sensed a powerful presence, a new ally and, he hoped, a friend. Yoruichi Harribel, Arankar Espada No. 3, had just been recruited by Aizen, and he was eager to meet her. It had taken him days of tracking, jumps between crumbling dunes and smoky plains. His hair was a mess from the wind, his chest still scarred from the fight with Barragan, but he felt alive, more alive than ever, in fact. Kurama rumbled a snort in his head. You're way too eager. We've a part to play, remember? Act like you've been here before. Just can't help it, Naruto grinned. New people to meet, who knows, they might even have ramen. Kurama rolled his eyes. Remind me to lock you in a desert cell with no broth. Just ahead, he glimpsed three slender silhouettes standing near a wide delta of puddled water, a rare oasis in this dead, sand-blasted world. One figure stood taller and regal, broad-shouldered, with long flowing hair, arms folded behind her back. Three others hovered around her, restless as desert scorpions. Naruto recognized them instantly by the weird water-blue color of their Ryutsu, Tears Frakken. Mila Rose, Sung Sun, and Apache, the Trace Bastias. They were notoriously fierce and fiercely loyal. If anything, Kurama's praise was real. Naruto was brimming with energy. He slowed to a stop a distance away, trying to look casual, not easy when you were a blonde whirlwind radiating the chakra of a Jinchuriki. Yoruichi Harribel turned her head and calmly surveyed his approach. Her gaze was cool and measured. Behind her, Apache puffed out her cheeks in confusion, Sung Sun's single visible eye widened, and even Mila Rose looked taken aback. Who in blazes are you? His grin broke wider, he simply couldn't help himself. Whoami. The entire quartet flinched as he raised his voice. My Naame. Jiraiya himself would have been proud of the pose that he struck up. He planted his feet, tossed his head to flick his hair behind him and thrust an arm forward, palm out, fingers splayed. Is Naruto Uzumaki. He finished with exaggerated flourish. And you must be Lady Harribel. I heard your new retinue is impressive. The Fracken tensed, fingers tightening on weapons. Apache took a half step back behind Sung Sun, who placed a hand on her weapon. Mila Rose cracked her knuckles with a low chuckle. Quote. Naruto grinned. You can try. Tear's voice, when she spoke, was gentle and warning. Naruto Uzumaki, is it? She rested both hands behind her, disarming but firm. I am Tear Harribel. Lord Aizen has mentioned you. What brings a wanderer like you to these parts? Plenty of reasons, really, curiosity chief amongst them. Naturally he wasn't about to say that. Guess you could say I'm here to help. He dropped his pose cheerfully, slapping his own chest where his scarred wound throbbed faintly. Not that I don't get lost sometimes, ya know. Nalil, watching from behind a distant dune, hid a smile with her hand. He seemed more lively than ever. She huddled low behind the sand, cloaked in shadow, every muscle tensed with anticipation. She had followed him at a distance, she couldn't miss seeing this encounter. Nep Nep chafed at the sand below, enjoyment flickering in her emerald eyes. Go on, Naruto, she thought. Show them how not to be formal. Tear kept a polite but cautious distance. She eyed the monsterically high energy in Naruto's grin. I see. A wanderer with much pride. Pride sounded like a warning. Not that he'd heed it. Naruto nodded eagerly. Yeah, pride's me, for sure. I'm full of it. But I know when to back off. Don't worry, I didn't come to make trouble, Lady Harribel. He swung a thumb over his shoulder. Besides, Aizen's got plenty of plans already. I just thought I'd wander over and say hi. His light tone didn't allay Fracken's concern. Apache bit her lip and whispered to Sung Sun, who nodded sharply. Mila Rose's eyebrows furrowed under her dark raincloud of hair, and growled, loud enough for Naruto to hear, he calls her lady. What are you playing at, Whiskers? Naruto's grin wavered, but he responded with an affable shrug. I'm not used to being polite. But hey, I could always use more friends. What'd you say to a little spar or something? The trio perked up. Tear spread her arms. Ladies, she said softly, but firmly, this Arankar is our guest. We fight no one needlessly. Her calm voice cut through the tension, and one by one the three Arankar halted. Apache's chakrams lowered an inch. Sung Sun let her companion off her back a tiny fraction. Mila scowled but said nothing. Ah, really? Naruto clicked his tongue. Had he overdone it a little? He'd never get them to open up like this. Shaking his head, he feigned a laugh he didn't completely feel. Whoa, sorry, I didn't mean to trouble anyone. He clasped his hands behind his head, bouncing lightly on his heels. Still, maybe he'd provoke them a little. What's up with your names? Tear took the remark in stride, realizing what he intended. Not her followers. He thrust out his hand towards each of them. Mila Rose, hey there. You got a flower in your hair, huh? Sung Sun, do I say that right? Hi. And Apache, you look scrappy, awesome name. You girls must be the famous Trace Bastias I've heard about. Gotta be honest, I don't really get the name. Kurama snickered. Here we go. Mila Rose clenched her fists. Apache and Sung Sun exchanged a glance. Sung Sun tilted her head in mild amusement while Apache glowered. Mila stepped forward, balling her fists. You dare mock us? Apologize. Who's mocking? He granted them a grin that would have made Neutra cry. Just sayin' hello. Say hello to this. Mila's scowl turned razor sharp as she flung a sero at him. Not bad, but not good either. He'd seen much stronger than this. He caught the crimson blast in his hand and snuffed it out, smiling into the smoke. That's kinda weak. Are you even trying, here? Why you? Tear sighed. Mila, no. But her Fracken were already lunging in the wake of her attack. Mila rose lashed with blazing speed, even the still night wind howled around her three figures. The battle erupted in a swirl of sand and steel. Naruto immediately tensed, sliding his arms into a combat pose. They don't wait for permission, Kurama observed. Figure that out already. One by one, the Tres Bestias attacked. Apache lunged with her chakrams in a knife-hand strike aimed at Naruto's shoulder. Easy to sidestep. Her weapons whipped the air, missing him by a whisker. Then Sung Sun came at him with a charging slash, her sai screaming through the night like a blue blade. Naruto's grin grew. All right, party's on. He hopped backward, twisting through the air to avoid a third strike from Apache, and landed in a crouch. The Fracken were aggressive, cutting into the rhythm like predators. It was tempting to take them seriously, just as he had Baragon. Yet he kept his stance relaxed, almost easygoing. Not bad moves, he called out, laughing. Gotta do better than that, though. Kurama grumbled. Impudent children. Naruto needed a few words himself. As Apache swung again, his fist crackled with chakra, golden sparks swirling in his hand. He stepped inside her guard, ducking under the second blow, and with a swift uppercut sent her stumbling back into Sung Sun. The two of them skidded into each other, rolling across the sand in a grating cloud of grit. Naruto didn't pause. With a hop, he propelled himself forward. Mila Rose's sword came down on him with a bone-shaking punch, only for him to lean back. She missed by inches, and countered with an elbow to her midsection. The Urankar grunted and reeled from the impact. At the same time, Naruto extended his free hand, forming a Rasengan in his palm. The crackling sphere of wind chakra bloomed in an instant. She saw it, but there wasn't a damn thing she could do to dodge, not at this distance. Surprise! Naruto cried, unleashing the Rasengan directly into Mila's ribcage. The blast slapped her clean off her feet, spinning her around like a leaf in a desert storm. Her heavy laugh changed into a pained cough as sand exploded outward where she landed. Kurama raised an eyebrow. Rasengan, huh? I thought you'd gone easy on these three. Naruto just chuckled. They were going easy on me. Gotta show a little respect for landing a hit. As Mila tried to rise, he dashed forward and dealt with her recovering sisters in arms. A pair of thunderous kicks snapped back to back into Sung Sun's hips and Apache's ribcage, respectively. Both women yelled, flopping backwards onto the sand like ragdolls. Nell tilted her head and let out a soft laugh. He took them down without even sweating. She had a clear view now, crouching behind a dune's crest. His bright blue eyes sparkled and his grin was reckless as he towered over the others one by one. He truly was something. Her shoulders relaxed, and for the first time in a while she felt like things were as they should be. Naruto leading his own charge through Hawako Mundo. Come on, come on. Naruto teased as Sung Sun struggled to her knees. He spared a glance at Tear. Harribel's expression had remained remarkably calm through the entire brawl. Her water-blue eyes narrowed at the swirling fight, but there had been no command to stop or any real reprimand, except a quiet enough. That he had ignored. He sighed. Is your turn coming or what? Tear tutted at his brash behavior. Honestly, she tried to intervene, only for Mila to swing her sword at him with a roar. Naruto's eyes widened in faux alarm as he clapped both hands to either side of his whiskered cheeks. Watch out! He called, leaping aside as the club smashed into the sand. The impact sent a geyser of grit spewing out like a waterspout, blasting brown chunks of earth flew into his face. That's one way to play rough, he laughed, wiping sand out of his eyes. Not bad. Speaking of which, Apache and Sung Sun were up again too, trembling with fury. He's insane, Apache spat, wiping blood from a split lip. Yeah huh, Naruto agreed cheerfully, bobbing his head in a nod with a rueful chuckle. Insanity is kind of my thing. You might wanna release your swords now. The Tres Bestia bridled at his taunt. Never. The gall. Who do you think you are? He dashed in again and this time, moved far faster than his father ever had. Minato would have been proud of his dodging display, he felt. Landing between the toppled trio, he immediately found himself under attack, but bobbed and weaved between their blows, winding his arms in a spiral of wind and chakra. Apache's chakram strike was deflected by a swift hand, and Sung Sun's sai swing was caught by Naruto's wrist. With a grin he flipped backward and sent a spinning kick into Apache's belly. She crumbled in a heap. Before she could recover, he somersaulted and slammed a blazing palm into Sung Sun's back. The crack of bones echoed across the dunes as she collapsed on all fours. Naruto skidded on his knees just in time to avoid Mila Rose rushing back in with a roaring uppercut. He rolled under her fist, sprang to his feet behind her, and gave her a gentle poke in the back. Hey! You're not dead yet, right? He grinned wildly as the woman stumbled. Just making sure. Mila snarled through grit teeth, turning to face him again, clutching her side. I'll kill you. This wasn't working the way he'd hoped it would, they were just getting angrier and angrier. Wasn't a fight supposed to loosen ya up? Naruto tutted apologetically. That's a pretty bad attitude. Lighten up a bit. He gripped sand in one hand, gathered chakra, and unleashed a slender twister of wind that wrapped around Mila's legs and sent her toppling. In midair, he spun the full length of his body and hammered another Rasengan into her chest. This time the impact sent her flying into the sand in a painful heap, cracks echoing behind where she landed. For a moment, none of the four of them moved. This wouldn't do. No, no, no. It wouldn't do at all. Naruto tutted, adrenaline still thrumming in his veins. Around them, dust settled. Not one of Tyr's Fracken had managed more than to stagger him. As Mila finally lifted her head, blinking and seeing his grin through a haze of sand, he raised both hands and stuck out his tongue. I surrender. The trio absolutely hissed at him. You what? I give up. Naruto beamed back, breathless and laughing. I'm clearly no match for you. He'd hoped his surrender would loosen things up amongst them, given they were so reluctant to release their Zanpakuto or reveal any of their techniques. Unfortunately, it had the opposite effect. The three Fracken groaned and glared hatefully his way, trying to push themselves up. To no avail, he'd beaten them so badly they couldn't hope to rise, much less fight back. This wasn't working out at all like he'd planned. He'd thought they were stronger than that. He was already moving, walking past them. Nell's hands flew to her mouth to stifle another giggle. This was ridiculous, Naruto treating an Espada lieutenant's fight like a children's game. But she felt so proud. He had bested them easily, and yet he wasn't out for blood. She folded her arms from her hiding place, smiling with admiration. Tyr Harribel stepped forward from the background, stroking one finger thoughtfully beneath her chin. You have bested my Fracken, she said softly, as both Apache and Sung Sun whimpered softly on their bellies. Very impressive. But you show no mercy. Naruto shrugged, turning fully to face her. He uncoiled both arms and spread them wide, displaying the defenseless Fracken. They're not dead, if that's what you're asking. I kinda held back. Hurt you guys but not kill. He stepped forward, chin up. We can see my scars, right? You know I don't kill without reason. You said we're guests, I'm not going to kill my host's kids. Kurama snorted quietly. Kids. Besides, Naruto continued brightly, fighting is just training without goals. Your girls were attacking me. So I did what I had to. He shot a wink in Tyr's way. You wanted to see my strength, right? Now you know. I do indeed. Tyr regarded him calmly as she trailed off, her cool eyes flickering over his tousled hair. At length, her gaze slid back to her followers. Her Fracken were trying to grin through pain, willing allegiance in their pained gazes, but the fight had humbled them. Granted, that hadn't been his intent going into this. He'd been trying to make friends, yet he hoped he'd gotten some small semblance of his point across. Clasping both hands behind his head, he patiently awaited an answer from her. You are strong. I acknowledge this. His face lit up in relief. Great. Then we can let bygones be bygones and. However. So speaking, she drew her sword from its sheath and sent it spinning through the air before nimbly catching it in her right hand. It was a strange thing, the outline of a weapon, but hollowed out inside above the hilt, as though someone had begun forging a sword but simply forgot to fill it in. Tears soundlessly leveled the blade at him with intent, golden ryotsu swelling around her shoulders to engulf her body. You have harmed my followers. Allow me to repay the kindness you afforded them. Devour. Tiburon. Naruto's world burst into water. Grimmjow threw his head back and cackled at the sky. Why shouldn't he laugh? Today was a lovely day. Because, you see, he could sense it. See it. Feel it. Experience it. The raw power. That overwhelming killing intent. Such incredible destruction. Two monsters flinging themselves at one another, doing their damnedest to kill each other. One was an Arankar like him, sure, but the other was something beyond an Arankar, beyond even an Espada, a higher plane of existence that he couldn't even begin to fathom. Could he reach that level of power? Evolve even further than he is now? A wide grin split his face from ear to ear as he watched the battle take place. I want that. He couldn't wait to fight that blonde bitch. Or the bastard. Or better yet, both of them. Gotta get stronger. He had to. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. What the hell is she? Lolly and Mainoli hid in their rooms and refused to come out. Well that they did, too, they would have been brushed like the worms they were. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. So uncivilized. Zale Aporo Grants tutted as he continued his experiments. There was something to be said for raw power certainly, but his abilities didn't tend toward the realm of brute strength. And why should it, when already knew what the outcome of this bout would be? One blonde would win, the other would lose. It wasn't fate, but design. He would not meet the same end as Berrigan and Neutra. He was a warrior of the mind, not the body. He had allies. He was prepared. Wisdom trumped brute strength any day. Zamari, be a dear and pass me that material, won't you? As you wish. Oh, and Araniero, be careful with that poison. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Every hollow above and below Las Noches felt Hallibal's spiritual pressure. Some quivered in fear. Others are excited. A few others remained disdainful. And some. Were simply curious. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Release. Tia reveled in the freedom her unsealed state afforded her for only a moment, that split second in which she unsealed her sword and reclaimed the full breadth of her might in a torrent of rushing rivers. It felt wonderful to be back in something resembling her true form, hollow powers and all. Better yet, she no longer had that hideous half-mask concealing so very much of her face, while her golden hair hung loose and free, no longer obscuring her vision. In truth, it was only her third time unsealing her sword since becoming an Arankar. Thus unencumbered, she slashed her way free from the heart-shaped cyclone orb of water that came with her release and brandished her blade at her adversary. She was pleased to note that her once hollowed-out sword remained akin to that of a giant shark's tooth. Fitting, she felt, given her nature. Only then did she see Uzumaki. He remained exactly where she had left him without a care in the world, arms crossed before his chest, face serene as he stared her down. He'd been drenched by the deluge she called forth with her release, but if he had any concern for the state of his colorful clothes, he did little to show it. His wayward partner, Nalil, stood scarcely a yard behind him, her expression impassive, long green hair swaying in the wind kicked up by her spiritual pressure. There was no need for her to intervene on Naruto's behalf, nor would she for that matter. Uzumaki didn't need the help. She knew it. They both did. Apache, Sun, and Mila Rose had all been effortlessly defeated by him before they could unleash their release states and bring their true power to bear. He had toyed with them. humiliated them, laid them low, even if he claimed that wasn't his intention. His power was clearly a Spada class at the very least, even if he claimed otherwise. They had underestimated him. She would not make the same mistake. She would honor their sacrifice, take what she had seen of his fighting style against them and use it to ensure her victory. After all, in her experience, nay, her existence, there was no such thing as salvation without sacrifice. Therefore, she would fight. She was keenly aware of her battered subordinates buckling beneath the weight of her Ryutsu, but she remained confident in their ability to endure. Now she would avenge their defeat. Brandishing her blade at Uzumaki, she set her jaw and glared his way, green eyes narrowed into angry slits beneath her blonde lashes. Prepare yourself. Naruto merely hummed at her as a fisherman might upon inspecting the day's catch. Wow, you're even more beautiful without the mask. Bold of him. Flattery wouldn't save him from her wrath, however. Nothing would. Not much in the way of clothes though, He thumbed his chin, considering her intently. You've hardly got any armor on. How are you supposed to defend yourself, let alone fight like that? Nalil sighed into a fist. Your naivete is showing again, Naruto. He glanced back at her, confused. It is. Quite so, Harribel reprimanded him with a grimace. Any true Arankar should know I need no armor thanks to my hierro. Moreover, this form most represents what I was like as a Vasto Lord. There it was, a warning, the gauntlet thrown down at his feet, waiting to be picked up. She was no stripling to be stomped down like Neutra, nor was she so arrogant as to believe herself impervious like Barragan. She was stronger than the old man. If not for his irksome ability, she would have bested him long ago. She pitied that old fool's Fracken. Should Uzumaki survive his encounter with her, they would surely try to take revenge someday, and they would pay with their lives. As such, she expected concern from Uzumaki. At the very least. Her kind were rare indeed. One did not tangle lightly with a former Vasto Lord. Instead, he whistled. Always wanted to fight one of those. You shall have your wish. She tilted her blade at a vertical angle, ready to slash him down. I will have my revenge for my subordinates. I'm going to crush you with overwhelming force, just as you did them, and make sure you never have the will to get up again. Is that so? Naruto uncrossed his arms, planted both hands in his colorful pockets and smiled. Pretty big boast for a newly minted Arankar. The arrogance of the strong. But she supposed that was to be expected after he'd dispatched Barragan. She'd heard the stories from her comrades. Barragan butchered and Neutra slain not long before him. Neither was given a clean end. Harribel did not mourn their deaths, nor did she envy them. The strong thrived. The weak died. Such was the ironclad rule of battle. And yet, she did not understand why this interloper had been allowed to do as he pleased thus far. By all accounts, he existed outside of Lord Aizen's chain of command. He was clearly an Arankar or something akin to one, yet not an Espada. He held no rank, which only further complicated matters. But neither did he lord himself over them as most might expect of their kind either. He simply did as he pleased, when he pleased, with whom he pleased. Well, not today. She knew he was strong, but she believed herself to be stronger. She would not let him run roughshod over her. Belatedly, her lips pursed as another, far more concerning thought occurred to her. He'd not drawn his weapon. Won't you release your staff? What? This old thing. Naruto patted the ringed weapon slung over his shoulder with a lazy sigh. Nah, she devours my energy like you wouldn't believe. Besides, I don't need her. There it was, that casual arrogance again. Was he implying he could defeat her in his sealed state? Preposterous. In refusing to release his sword, he was practically handicapping himself, tying both hands behind his back. A frown creased Tia's face, and with it, the barest beginnings of outrage bloomed beneath her bosom. You mock me even now. He raised both hands. Not at all. I'd just rather not kill you. Really, this is all just a big misunderstanding, so why don't we just calm down before you attack and flip my switch? Lagoda. With those words, water coated the tip of her blade. She fired it at him like a missile, targeting his feet. Naruto sighed and dodged with a simple sidestep, not even deigning to use Sonido, but that gave her an opening, of which she took full advantage. Flickering into existence behind him with the dull crack of Sonido, she lunged forward, thrusting forth for his flank with a quick jab of her sword, simultaneously aiming for his back, shoulders, and spine all at once. He was wide open, utterly unprotected, completely exposed. She'd run him through and be done with this in an instant. Her world went sideways as he effortlessly parried her attack with the back of his right hand and, without even looking, pivoted to sweep her feet out from under her. How did he? His hand closed around her startled visage as she fell and doubled her momentum in an instant, violently smashing the back of her skull down into the sand. If it weren't for her sturdy skin, he would have bashed her brains out among the dunes. Even then she was left reeling, glaring at him through the gaps of his fingers as he pinned her to the ground. You're underestimating me, he chided, grappling with her. Just like Barragan and Neutra did. How's the saying go again? Once is happenstance. Twice is coincidence. 3 times is a pattern. Congrats, Tia. His fingers bit into her face, all but locking her in place. You're number 3. You win the grand prize. There was no time to charge a Sero, not with him crushing her skull. Harribel levered her blade into his chest with a furious snarl. Cascada. A towering plume of water erupted from her blade, struck Uzumaki dead center in the chest, and launched him back from her, but not for long. As she scrambled to her feet she saw gravity carry him into the air within a graceful arc, kicked off the air to balance himself and Rasengan. When had he closed the distance? She hadn't even seen him move, let alone heard him. One moment he was a good 3 yards away, the next she heard the name of his technique and he was suddenly right up in her face, thrusting a spiraling sphere into her torso. There was no time to react, let alone dodge, she could only brace. And then, quite simply put, pain. His penultimate attack drilled into her stomach, devastated her defenses, and sent her body skipping and skidding across the sands. She righted herself with a hasty burst of water and clutched her side, gasping as her ribs protested violently in the face of her sudden movement. He'd knocked the wind out of her. She needed a moment to breathe, to recover, too. Where are you looking? A shadow fell over her and she looked up just in time to see a flying axe kick come whistling in at her head. Her eyes bulged and somehow managed to twist her entire body to the right at the last second in a desperate attempt at evasion, but that only meant his heel came crashing down into the sands instead, the subsequent shockwave of which not only kicked up a plume of grainy smoke and obscured him from view, but also sent her stumbling like a novice. Damn it. Stronger than he looked. Faster, too. Tia swore softly under her breath, green gaze flitting about in the haze. He'd masked his reality again, but she knew he was close. He wouldn't just cut and run after an attack like that. Which meant he had to be nearby, close enough to remain on the offensive, yet not too far to protect himself if she counterattacked. Her brow furrowed when he made no attempt to reappear. Show yourself. Something moved in her peripherals, a shadow in the smoke. Over here. She pivoted and instinctively brought her blade up to defend. It saved her life. A hellish palm heel smashed into her sword. Her blade cracked on the spot, causing her eyes to widen. She instantly lashed out with her free hand, intent on slapping him with a bala, but he caught her palm on his own, fingers and all, forcing a struggle between the two of them. Uzumaki grinned at her, whiskered cheeks dimpling in quiet glee as they strained against one another. Not bad. You're definitely stronger than Kenpachi. She didn't know the name, but apparently it was high praise on his part, because those merry blue eyes practically sparkled with glee while he overpowered. If you really wanna go that badly. Guess I'll have to oblige. Something in his gaze stirred a primal panic within what passed for her soul these days. She couldn't help herself, she reacted. Wrenching her blade to the side, she blasted him back with another rush of water. Much to her surprise, Uzumaki willingly took the attack head-on once more, laughing as he skidded several feet into the sand. Even now, faced with the full breadth of her power, he wasn't trying. Water manipulation, he mused aloud, regarding the wet sand around him with a curious expression. No, you can clearly create it, too. That's new. Quick as can be, he turned that selfsame smile of his upon her once more. You would have been a badass kunoichi in my world. The gall of it all. She snarled at him. I don't need your pithy praise. Hey now. I was actually behind honest. Be gone. Tia crashed into Uzumaki like a wave, intending to both bowl him down and finish him off. Alas, she only achieved one of those goals. Although he caught her blade between both hands, the impact drove him back and slammed him against one of the many pillars dotting the landscape. Pinning him against it, she forced the blade close to his throat, then closer still, sending sparks flying as she sought to decapitate him. You bore me, Uzumaki. Release your sword. I'm boring you. Those gentle blue orbs narrowed in confusion. That's your concern. Yes. She retorted blandly. You'll die at this rate. Is that your intention? A low growl rose in his throat as his eyes narrowed further still. It was her one and only warning before those serene sapphire shades snapped into sinister scarlet slits. His pupils inverted, becoming the feral slits of some terrible beast while the whites of his eyes blazed black. When next he spoke, his voice rumbled with a terrifying timbre, a dual cadence, almost as though others were speaking with him, no, through him. Don't make me laugh. Raw Ryutsu thickened the air between them to choke her. The retort she'd mustered withered and died on her tongue. In an instant it felt as though she'd stepped into the sun itself, because suddenly she was burning, boiling, blazing as his spiritual pressure cooked her from within. She couldn't blink, couldn't think. It took a great effort on her to barely breathe. It didn't stop there. As she looked on aghast, Uzumaki effortlessly forced her sword away from his throat, as one might a child wielding a stick. No matter how she struggled against him, he continued to force her back, until he dragged her arm completely out of position. Holding it in her limb up well above his head, he leisurely drew his own free hand back, fingers taut like blade, aiming them at her chest. Like a sword. No, the hand of an Urankar was akin to a sword. He slashed her defenses as though they weren't even there, cut right through her hierro like it was nothing. A bloody trench opened across her chest, sending her sailing back through the air. Time seemed to slow in that instant. Distantly, she became of several things all at once. Her subordinate shouting in the background, the blazing pain in her torso. And those eyes. Those terrible, awful eyes. They seared in her very soul. You wanna know what I think would be really boring, Tia? His gaze snapped to hers, leering through the flying droplets of blood. If you weren't in your release state. Lowering his arm, he flicked her blood off his right hand, set his palm against the pillar and dug his fingers into it. So do me a favor, and stay just the way you are. Or better yet. Cackling, he launched the whole damn thing at her. Go beyond if you can. What was he implying? In the end, she simply didn't have time to fully comprehend his words, nor the meaning they implied. She slashed through the falling pillar without a second thought, narrowly preventing it from crushing her. Alas, she realized her mistake too late. The moment she carved it apart, Uzumaki shot through the falling halves, ducked under her blade and smashed a fist into her gut. Harribel ate sand. It was a most unpleasant meal. Blast it all, he'd slipped through her pescuezo like it was nothing. Where had he? A harsh crack of bala smacked her into the air from the side, sending her tumbling end over end. From there, a stern heel caught her chin to send her screaming back to the sand. She managed to catch herself, albeit barely, the act of which left her winded, gasping for air. He couldn't be this fast. Not even Lord Aizen possessed such speed. Sorry, Uzumaki's distorted voice crooned behind her. Need a minute. She pivoted, blade blazing a cold gold. He couldn't dodge at this range. Sero. Uzumaki caught her blast in his palm and tossed it over his shoulder as one might a spent soda can. It detonated explosively there, kicking up a pillar of golden white light. His own reality burned against it, golden like hers but deeper now, darker, more amber on orange than a true yellow. He granted her a sharp smile. I'll take that as a no. She flicked her wrist and drowned him in a towering plume of water. Cascada. Naruto smashed through it to drive a spinning kick into her neck, sending her tumbling away. Tia tensed, expecting a follow-up attack, but somehow it never came, and she was left once more to right herself, grimacing at her injuries. Her adversary awaited her, arms crossed before his chest once more. Are you afraid? She snarled at him. What of me? Losing yourself. He rolled his shoulders in a shrug, wearing a selfsame smile. Fear is basic. It's what keeps us alive. It drives us forward. Are you telling me you've never been afraid before? Not a day in your life. Harribel refused to answer. Quote. I have. He ran a bloody hand through his hair. Wait, why was it bleeding? Through his hair, uncaring of the crimson streak he left behind. If I'm completely honest, I'm afraid all the time. But that fear makes me stronger, tells me what to do and what not to do, you know. I'm afraid of what I've become. I'm afraid of my own power. Hell, I'm even afraid of this damn staff. He nudged the weapon on his back for good measure before continuing. There's plenty of stuff I'm afraid of, don't get me started on ghosts. Tia found herself squinting at him, quietly incredulous. And yet you aren't afraid of me. Nope. He shook his head, setting his blonde bangs swaying. I didn't mean to start this fight, I'll apologize for that. I got a little too carried away. But now, I gotta admit, my blood's up now. Raising a hand, he clenched it into a fist. I wanna see what you're truly capable of. She stilled, quietly indignant, but he wasn't done with her yet. Aizen mentioned it to me, you know. This whole aspect of fear he has going on for the Espada. Yours is a sacrifice, isn't it? That's noble. I can respect that. So out of that respect, I'll give you a warning, 'cause there's something I wanna try. He pointed that bloody finger at her. You might wanna dodge this. Her eyes widened. No. Ulquiorra did say any Espada could learn to use this, you know. Even though I'm not one, I listened to him. I learned. Those whiskered cheeks of his dimpled in a wry smile. Although I guess I'm still a bit of an amateur since I can't pull one off without cutting my finger like the Gran Rey version. Now, then, I wanna see your Sero again. Show me. Realization broke like the dawn, horrifying Harribel. No. She was still new to being an Arankar, but she recognized that stance, and the technique that came with it, even if she was unable to use it. That Uzumaki was willing to worry about her. Had he gone mad? Sweat beaded upon her brow as she shouted at him. Lord Aizen has forbidden us from using that beneath the dome. Naruto scoffed outright. Yeah, he's not my boss. Blue on black light crackled at his fingertip. Sero Escuras. A massive streak of overwhelming tainted azure blasted forward, crossing the distance between them in an instant. Harribel saw her death in it. No chance to dodge, no, the blast was too massive to dodge, and he'd just turn it toward her if she tried to escape. There was only one option, mad though it was. She panicked and frantically slashed her blade forward, carving a wide arc of gold before her. Sero. Her attack collided with Uzumaki's in a wordless roar devoid of all sanity. Light met dark. Evolution requires fear. Not just any fear, mind you. Mere mindless fear by itself isn't enough, it has to be a most particular fear. The fear that, in your current state, you could die and disappear at any given moment. The fear that you're not strong enough, just not enough. The fear that you could lose everything in an instant. Such terror is to chill your blood, shatter your soul, and set your very heart ablaze all at once. Aizen had never understood fear. Make no mistake, he knew what it was, mind you, recognized it from an academic standpoint and in other creatures, he simply had yet to experience it himself. Sometimes he wondered if he ever would. He had been born superior, with superior gifts, and a superior mind besides. What need did he have of fear? Alarm and concern were its closest cousins, and even then he seldom felt them anymore. Not since he'd first seen that thing. Not since the Soul King. Bile burned the back of his throat at the very thought of that abomination. The Soul King was no god, but a living corpse shackled and bound. Soul Society's greatest lie. An involuntary shudder shook his shoulders, not from observing Uzumaki's pitched battle in the dunes below his balcony, but something altogether worse. Ever since that moment, he has marched forward. Always forward. Endlessly forward, toward a goal only he could see. For the longest time he had despaired, knowing he would never find an equal to join in his journey. No one came close to understanding him, nor why he needed to, why he must do what must be done. No one could ever truly stand beside him, not Tosen, certainly not Ichimaru, nor anyone. Until that day. That moment. Him. Now he smiled as he watched his equal batter Tia Harribel about the dunes. By all accounts, the soul of Uzumaki Naruto had performed a miracle upon his death. No mere Manos, Ijukas, nor even a vasto lord stage for him. Upon his passage from the land of the living to the world of the dead, he'd somehow become something altogether greater and emerged as an Arankar outright, an existence that was neither Shinigami, nor entirely a hollow. He had passed through the shadow of death, although the exact circumstances of said demise remained unclear, and subsequently ascended. Stranger still, he'd brought power from his last life with him, a fact unheard of amongst hollows, if that was indeed what he was. Truly fascinating, these shinobi. He simply must pay their world a visit someday, provided he found a waypoint for. Perhaps he would. For now, setting aside Uzumaki's unique immunity to Kyoka Suigetsu, and wasn't that a surprise, he was content to watch things unfold. He had made many mistakes, committed several selfish, and some might even say soulless deeds, all in the pursuit of creating a greater world. Karma would come for him in due time, he knew. Until then he would push forward. Uzumaki understood that. How very refreshing it was to have an equal. Moreover, he had proven himself most adept when it came to culling the wheat from the chaff. Neutra was merely the dregs, the bottom of the barrel as it were. He had brought about his own demise after causing the mysterious disappearance of Nalil's Fracken. As such, Aizen didn't regret the circumstances that led to his end. Baragan, however, had admittedly been something of a loss. He would have preferred Uzumaki let him live, despite his rotten attitude. Yet their deaths had only served to further sharpen the espada. In slaying them, he and Uzumaki forced the others to climb higher, inspiring more to join their ranks, which in turn rallied others to his cause. It had also planted the seeds of vengeance. He had no doubt that Neutra and Baragan's faction were waiting in the wings, eager to avenge their fallen masters. Any one of them might seek to join the ranks of the Espada and make trouble for Uzumaki. After all, while he had been the one to slay Neutra for his impudence, he'd let Las Noches believe it was the blonde's doing. Such served his purposes. Loyalty was such a fascinating concept, wasn't it? Alone, they were trash. Together, these seven of them might actually pose a threat. He had thought himself the master of provocation, yet here Uzumaki was, riling up another Espada with ease, albeit unintentionally. He might actually kill her at this rate. They're getting kinda rowdy out there, don't you think? Aizen glanced over his shoulder, not at all surprised. He'd sensed Ichimaru's approach moments ago. Always in his blind spot, like the snake he was. Is that what you believe, Jin? The ever-smiling Shinigami made no attempt to conceal his amusement. I'm just sayin' what I see. Aizen turned away from the destruction in the dunes. The will to fight without hatred is like an eagle without wings. His subordinate shrugged. I don't get it. Of course he didn't. I'm saying they won't kill each other like that. They lack the animosity for it at present. Jin quirked an eyebrow. You can tell that sort of thing. Naturally. He turned a bland smile upon him. After all, you hate me, don't you? Jin's gaze creaked open. Hey, now. That's supposed to be a joke. It ain't funny. So the time wasn't yet ripe. Good to know. One could have heard a pin drop in the silence that followed. There it was, the gauntlet thrown down between the two of them. A warning. Was it not? He allowed his smile to become a touch more genuine. I was merely making an attempt at humor. Jin scoffed and turned away. Maybe don't do that. Leave the jokes to Uzumaki. My apologies. I didn't intend to offend. One day, perhaps someday soon, Ichimaru would try to kill him. He might even succeed. But not today. In the meantime, he had schemes to scheme, and plots to plan. If Uzumaki wanted to make his forces stronger in the interim, he would gladly accept that. And if by throwing himself into countless battles, he somehow sharpened his skills further, all the better. For the first time in forever, he found himself wondering if he too should bother to exert himself. When was the last time he had deigned to train? Sure, there could be no harm in sharpening his own skills. He hadn't used his Bankai for some time, come to think of it. A potent tool it might be, but he vastly preferred his Shikai. Perhaps it was time to break out of that over-reliance. He turned his attention toward his would-be betrayed and an idea dawned. Shall we spar, Jin? His fellow captain paused, but only for a moment. Sure, why not? Me getting rusty. Aizen made no effort to hide his smile, and why should he? Everything was proceeding as he had foreseen. It was only a matter of time now. Victory was assured. Opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis. Light met dark. In truth, it was akin to night and day, as though the world itself were trying to swallow the sun, swallow her. From the moment Tia desperately slammed her Sero against Uzumaki's Sero Ascuras, she knew what the outcome would be. Even so, she had to try, because to not try was to die. She felt her legs buckle almost immediately as her attack was forced back. It was like trying to hold back the ocean with nothing but willpower in her bare hands. The heat alone scorched her palms straight through her hiero while the low roar of their clashing attacks rose in her ears, drowning out all sound, all sense, all salvation. This was it, then. She was going to die here. And her opponent wasn't even taking her seriously. A muscle jumped in her jaw as she found herself skidding backward in the sands. Further, now. Furthest still, until there was nowhere left to go. Her back kissed one of the many pillars dotting the sands, and in an instant she found herself pinned against it, in a grim reflection of what she'd done to him only a few minutes before. She couldn't flicker away, couldn't let up her Sero either, even for a moment, because the second she did, she would be obliterated. Hallible. Naruto's voice rang out over their clashing blasts. Come on now. Where'd all that bite go? I know you're stronger than this. Stop holding back. Did he really think she was restraining herself? By what standard did he measure her? And against whom? Cracks formed on her blade. It was all she could do to hold him at bay. Her hands were bleeding. No world was without sacrifices. Such is life. She didn't want to become stronger through the power she gained by killing and sacrificing another. If she couldn't win alone, then she would win as a group. That was all there was to it. Yes, no world is without sacrifices. But if she produced casualties, she would also sustain casualties of her own. If only she didn't think that way. Because here stood someone who had seemingly sacrificed nothing, and gained everything. A being that defied hollows and Shinigami alike. He was going to kill her. She was going to die to him. They were both a Rancor, so she couldn't even hope to be devoured by him, have her strength live on in him. How unseemly. She had refused an offer of alliance from Barragan once, long ago. There would be none of that here. He aimed to crush her, completely and unequivocally, just that she had promised to do to him. Was there nothing she could do? Nothing at all. Wait. Her hands were bleeding. That was it. The blood. Thrusting her hands forward with a furious yell, she added her own life force to her Sero, blood swirling within to render it a sharper shade of gold. It swelled larger, burned brighter against the dark, blended with her power and ignited in a singular shout as she cried out 3 words. Gran Rey Sero. Naruto's blast buckled beneath hers, allowing her to regain what ground she'd lost. She pushed forward with her Sero and angrily advanced, escaping certain death and the pillar she'd been pinned against. Hope dawned within her, sparking with every step. She could do this. She could fight. She could win. She could. 7 steps. That was all she managed, all he allowed before that wave of blue-on-black darkness surged into the breach she'd created and sent her stumbling back. Better. His voice rang in her ears as he caught the flash of a grin over their clashing attacks, but not enough. You gotta try harder than that. She was trying. She'd given everything she had. There was nothing left. She'd reached her limit. He'll kill me. The thought startled her. What was this sensation? Fear. Was she afraid? No. The fiery flash of 3 separate Seros suddenly hit the sky, bathing it in shades of red on orange mingled with violet before they barreled into Naruto's back. His blast buckled once more, giving her precious breathing room, the chance to advance, however slightly, and squint into the rising smoke. At first, Harribel couldn't comprehend what she was seeing. She squinted through the clashing light of her Sero, struggling to see. She immediately wished she hadn't. A pack lowered her head arm, panting heavily, flanked by Sun and Mila Rose, each in their released state. Wasted and gasping for air, they nevertheless managed to look smug, thinking they'd actually accomplished something just now, as though they'd actually managed to wound him, when in reality they'd only singed his clothes. The fools. Their efforts were in vain. They'd only awoken a sleeping fox. Apache rasped a laugh, sweat beading heavily upon her brow. How'd y'all like that? Really? Naruto frowned at them, utterly incredulous, still holding both her and her Sero at bay with ease. This was supposed to be a one-on-one. You had your turn. Screw you. Apache gripped her left arm, as did her comrades. Chimera Parka. Scram. With his free hand, the blonde bastard pivoted and blasted a bala their way, devastating them before they could think of trying anything else. The trio crumpled in a smoldering heap. This time, they didn't rise again. Harribel choked. Naruto clicked his tongue, admonishing her. If only you were stronger. In that instant, Lord Aizen's words came back to her, the very phrase he'd said when he saved her that day. If you do not want to produce casualties, then gain power. If the power you seek is your ideal, then rise to claim it. This wasn't her limit. It couldn't be. She refused to accept it. And yet, while the spirit was strong, the flesh was weak. How she despised this weak body of hers. No one would save her this time. Surely she could still become stronger. She had to become stronger. She must become stronger not solely for her sake, but that of her comrades, so they might never be trampled again. If she acquired more power, she wouldn't produce any more casualties. That was her ideal. She had to see what it would become. It was that, or die. Apache, Sun, Mila Rose. If she perished here, so would they. Uzumaki would surely finish them off. She believed that wholeheartedly. Not again. She couldn't lose again. This mustn't happen a second time. No. No, 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 absolutely not. Just like that the dam burst and power flooded her. The whites of her eyes burned a golden black as she pushed Uzumi's attack back. Her own Granny Rey Sero, formerly faltering, now began to darken dangerously at the edges, bleeding shadow in response to her sudden upswing of anger until, finally, she thrust it at him with a yowl. I won't die here. In an instant, her attack cancelled his out and plowed through. Naruto made no move to dodge. He stood there and took it head on, willingly vanishing into the blast with a smile. The ensuing wave of golden death carved out a massive swath of smoke and sand alike, plowing through Las Noches like a hot knife through butter. It kept going, until finally, it vanished in a pillar of teeming light in the distance. Gasping, heaving for breath, Harribel fell to one knee. Victory had never tasted too bitter. Still, it was hers, and good riddance to that blonde brute. Not bad. You even managed to wreck a perfectly good arm. Her head snapped up. No. It couldn't be. Yup. Uzumaki waded through the smoke, idly rolling his right arm. The limb was a charred mess, burnt and blackened, its colorful sleeve nowhere to be seen. Aside from that, there wasn't so much as a wound upon him. As she looked on aghast, he gripped his mangled limb just below the shoulder and tore it clean off his body, spattering her with blood. With but a grunt of pain, he grew another one in its place. Instantaneous regeneration. Only Ulquiorra should be capable of that. How did you see? Uzumaki laughed, not at her, but in joy of her accomplishment. Why the long face? You can do it, too. Fear is one hell of a motivator. He threw a punch and she clambered back, only to find him slower than before. Or was he? A blazing kick nearly took her head off, but she was able to dodge it by ducking low and batting him back with her blade. Only then did she realize, he wasn't slower, she'd somehow become faster. How? What did you do to me? Idly she glanced down at her hands, confused to find them, and her blade, hale and whole, more than that, changed. Much to her chagrin, Uzumaki snapped his fingers and conjured a floating full-body mirror of all things directly before her. She balked, expecting another attack, but it never came. He simply, how did you? Creation of all things. Here. He held out the mirror towards her. See for yourself. A stranger stared back at her, scarcely recognizable. The lightning bolt-shaped marks on her face had gained an extra jagged section while moving closer to her eyes, now glowing a bright turquoise green. Her once blonde hair had become an eerie shade of ashen white, with several long strands reaching to her knees at the back and two bangs framing her face. But the alterations didn't end there. She'd gained two black and white, jagged, rock-like, long and roughly triangular ornaments on her head, one on either side, angled toward each other, with an additional section on each extending outward from her head, resembling ears. From there, her gaze traveled lowered and widened slightly, because she'd lost most of her resurrection armor and clothing, with her bare bosom and neck only barely covered by long strips of yellow ryutsu. What little of her new armor remained was more asymmetrical in appearance, yet far more alien to her. Her left arm had gained a black and gray gauntlet reaching from her wrist to her elbow, with the underside tapering off to the top of her arm in a slanted progression and with an additional small section on her tricep, the rock-like bracer resembling a crashing wave on her forearm, leaving her left hand's fingernails are also visibly longer. Conversely, her right arm was now fully armored in the same black-gray material, with a large pauldron on her shoulder consisting of yet more rockish material reminiscent of a crashing wave. Her hand had all but disappeared into her new sword, now fully reforged, loosely bearing the original shape of her standard resurrection blade yet composed of yellow ryutsu concentrated around a large, gray hilt floating around her before extending outward to form the body of the sword. Pivoting, she beheld the rest of her changes, silently marveling at them. Her upper back had gained a gray, shark-like fin whose base wraps around to the underside of her arms on her chest, alongside a small inverted black and gray triangle lying underneath her, with two curving black markings pointing toward it on either side of her abdomen. Her waist meanwhile held three long and wide white-gray strips of fabric hanging off either side in her back, with a dorsal fin-like segment on her lower back holding them close. A stray strip of fabric on her back has a large flare of yellow ryotsu on the end, giving it the appearance of a shark's tail, with her legs likewise armored in black fins akin to that of a shark. Finally, she could see her widened hollow hole at her pelvis, where her womb would be. The sight of it shamed her. What am I? What is this? She balked at herself as much as the new power surging in her form. What have you done? Me. Uzumaki rolled his darkened eyes, chastising her for failing to understand. I didn't do anything. This is all you. Welcome to the second stage. He glanced at her fallen comrades and chuckled when she bristled. Don't worry. Nalil's gonna heal them up. I wouldn't really make you sacrifice yourself or your comrades. I just want to see what you've got, even if it means playing the villain and scaring the daylights out of ya. No world is without sacrifices. Harribel realized that. This sea of blood covered in ashes, that hell was their world. Only the strongest survived it. And yet Uzumaki smiled despite it. Just what was he? He leaned forward to flick her forehead. I knew you weren't at your limit earlier, because I've seen an Urankar blast past the first stage. And who might that be? He smiled. Sorry, that's my secret to keep. Ah. It was Nalil, wasn't it? Had to be. Alright, let's continue. Harribel balked despite herself. Continue. Naruto waggled a blonde brow at her. You're not satisfied either, are you? After all, you only just got that form. Don't you wanna test it out? Admittedly, yes. She wanted payback for what he'd put her through as well. Do you have what it takes to match me in this form? Rather than retort, he clasped both hands behind his head, leaving himself wide open. Suppose that's the question. Her fist slammed headlong into his face. He took it with a smile. Almost immediately she recoiled with a yelp. What is your head made of? Pure metal. Nah, I've just got a thick skull. I noticed. He raised his finger again, but she wasn't having it. Her viendo. Harribel launched herself at him. She swung her blade, summoning not just a torrent of scalding water, but a massive crushing sphere of it. Trapped him in, developed him in it. Drowned him. Uzumaki grinned and shattered it with a shout. That's more like it. A fresh torrent of boiling water smashed him into the sky. Naruto laughed all the more. She struck his shoulder as he fell out of the sky, only for him to ride the force and used it to twist his body around, getting right up in her face. Time for round 2. Nell watched the carnage unfold with a wistful smile. Half of Las Noches might be leveled at this rate. Yet even so, he's having fun, isn't he? A fresh explosion followed, heralding another peal of laughter from her beloved blonde. She was so focused on it that she almost missed something. Almost, but not quite. The dull hum of sonido behind her heralded a new arrival, never once taking her gaze from the battle ahead. She smiled into one hand. Curious, are we? I am. Footsteps shifted the sands behind her. You watch him intently, woman. Of course I do. She tucked a stray strand of pale hair behind one ear as a fresh burst of water and wind lost at the air. I love him. Love. The footfalls came to rest beside her, a pale figure standing just on the peripherals of her vision. I do not understand love. Are you not afraid of him? She lowered her hand and turned to look at the new arrival at last. Why should I be, Ulquiorra? Blank green eyes regarded her. He exhibits frightening power. That much was true, yet she knew his soul. I know, but I also know he would never use that power against me, or against anyone he doesn't want to. At that, Ulquiorra tilted his head and made a noncommittal noise, causing her to laugh helplessly. Perhaps I should phrase it differently. He's my heart. Her fellow Espada scoffed. Heart, you say? Humans use that word so casually, as though it's in the very palm of their hands. She shrugged. Perhaps it is. This time, there could be no hiding his sneer. We are hollows. We do not possess such things. Don't we? She turned back to watch Naruto and Tia rip apart the dunes, wildly attacking each other. I once thought the same thing, until he convinced me otherwise. A spike of Reitsu behind her conveyed her comrades if she could call him such irritation with this matter. My eyes see everything. There is nothing they do not see. If I do not see it, it does not exist. I have fought until now, convinced of that, until him. Nell tutted happily as a pillar of blue light smashed into a wave of golden, and with it, a wry smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Yes, he does have that effect on people, doesn't he? Ulquiorra made a noise caught somewhere between a snort and a snarl. What is a heart? If I rip open your chest, I see it inside. He reached a hand toward her bosom, pausing just short when she made no move to defend herself, then reached out to her face. If I split your skull, shall I see it inside? Nell seized his wrist. Careful, now. Don't do anything foolish. Foolish. I believe myself to be stronger than you. Despite our rankings. Correct. She kept smiling. And what do your eyes tell you, now? He stared at her for a long moment, those blank green eyes reflecting nothing, his face, a mask of stone. You are concealing a great deal of power. I am. As are you. He went still, considering her anew. Where did you acquire this strength? Nell hummed in return, readying her Reitsu. Who knows? You'll find I'm full of surprises. Ulquiorra drew his sword in an instant. She beat him to it. Their blades clashed. The dunes blazed with green and fuchsia light. Opening parenthesis. Meanwhile, in Soul Society, Retsu was not pleased. She had tried meditating, tried distracting herself, tried. Well, everything really, and none of it was working. Not a jot. All that hard work with the boy, undone in an instant. Zaraki had grown stronger, yes, was still growing stronger, but it was meant to be by her hand, not his. Filthy Irankar. Did you say something, Captain? Oh, dear, Azane. She'd let the mask slip. She had an audience, best rectify that. Rising, she climbed to her feet and retrieved her sheathed sword. Azane called out after her. Where are you going? Retsu smiled at her, it was not a nice smile. For a walk. So friends, this was episode 2 of this exciting crossover adventure. If you enjoyed it and want episode 3 soon, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also comment down your thoughts. What secret do you think Naruto will uncover next in this mysterious new world? I'll see you in the next episode.